Hello, this is Keith Kreischer, the Executive Director of the IoT M2M Council, or IMC, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this webinar on IoT integration, brought to you by the IMC. I certainly hope everyone joining us today is staying safe and well in these interesting times. The topic for today's panel is backbone integration for IoT deployments. That panel is going to be moderated by my good friend, Fred Jens, who is the founder and principal at IoT Launch. And it's going to feature Blues and Professional Software Associates, or PSA, for the next hour or so. I'll hand off to Fred in just a minute, but first, before we begin, I also wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. This webcast is being streamed through your computer, so there is no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure your computer speakers or headset are turned on and the volume is up so you can hear the presenters. An on-demand version of this webcast will be made available later today and can be accessed using the same audience link sent to you earlier. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can submit them through the Q&A box on the right side of your screen. The presenters may answer your questions at the end of each session, but please feel free to ask questions at any time during the presentations or discussion. Any unanswered questions will be responded to offline. We do have a record of your registration, and we can associate that with your questions. So we will get to you. Worst case, if not during the session, then afterwards. For those of you that do not know the IMC, perhaps just a quick word of introduction. The IMC is the largest trade organization dedicated to the global IoT sector. Its membership is comprised of 28,000 rank and file adopter members who are individual enterprise users, product makers, OEMs, and apps developers that deploy IoT solutions. The IMC's board of governors includes 35 or so of the most influential IoT technology companies that provide solutions in the form of hardware, software, and connectivity. We encourage anybody attending today to check out our website, which is iotm2mcouncil.org. And on that website, you'll find information about a lot of things, but one thing I'd draw everyone's attention to is the IMC's newest initiative, just announced publicly, and that is a joint task force on IoT security formed with the Global Certification Forum. There's lots going on in the area of IT security right now, but what makes this initiative unique is that it covers not just IoT devices, but also networks and cloud app platforms. So please look for that on the IMC website. Moving on to today's session, the mission of the IMC is to accelerate the adoption of IoT technology for the public good. And we look at today's session on IoT backbone integration as exactly in keeping with that mission. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Fred Jens from IoT Launch. Fred, take us away.
Thank you, Keith. Just wanted to make sure I was unmuted. So first of all, thanks to the IMC for letting bringing this panel to market and everyone to join, and thanks for the attendees who are taking an hour of their day to learn a little bit about what's happening here. So first of all, the session is really about how do we, in line with what Keith said, what is the IMC mission? How do we simplify and speed time to market and adoption and success of IoT projects? And while IoT is nothing new, it's been around for many, many years now, there's still some inherent complexities that exist in the ecosystem. And when we think about how do we make this go quicker and easier, we're starting to see some unique collaborations in the market that I think are bringing building blocks and experts together to simplify and ease this path. So I'm going to start with a brief introduction of a few of us here. I'll be joined by two folks, as Keith said, Alistair from Blues and John Hertrich from PSA. But let me take a minute to introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. So IoT Launch was founded in 2000. It was really focused on trying to provide some insights and some services to customers who are, desiring to be an IoT innovator. Maybe they're a large company that is connecting a product or service that was never connected before, or maybe they're a startup looking to get into the space. What we found really in our experience is sometimes a Sherpa is needed, if you will. someone who's been through the ropes a lot and wants to basically bring and share some knowledge. So the theme of IoT launch is bringing experience, ecosystem, and execution to bear. We have a few offerings: insights and strategy services, ecosystem development, and execution services when needed. But what I want to talk and pivot to is really something that's kind of emerged from some of these discussions, and it's how do we simplify integration? And the panel today is really going to talk about 4-component formula for accelerating market success. For those of you who are new to the IoT space and have joined this call as maybe an early adopter, I think be cautious. There are a lot of IoT failures in the rearview mirror, and that's not that because it's not worked or it's not been technically feasible. Usually it comes because there's been potentially unclear goals set. The business model hasn't been well thought out of. There's routes to market, the challenges that sometimes exist. IoT is also a collection of numerous technologies. You've got hardware, firmware, connectivity, cloud services, mobile applications. There's a decent amount of technology shoved into what builds a simple IoT solution. And for those of you who have been in IoT, I'm preaching to the choir, but insufficient skills, integration problems, scalability. When you become successful, how do you manage that? And then we all are very keenly aware of some of the new security policies and requirements that are coming from different sovereigns around the world. So security can always be something that kind of can hold you back. So if that's the problems, how do we help you address some of the solutions and solve this? The panel today is going to have Blues and PSA. We're going to refer to some other compute and other partners in this mix, but it's how do we go from discovery to realization as quickly as possible, and that's the focus. So with that, I want to just really jump into letting the other two panelists introduce themselves and their companies. And with that, I will turn it over to you, Alistair, from Blues Wireless. Hey, Alistair, you're on mute. You might want to check your mute button.
How's that?
Much better.
Thanks for the intro. Thanks for telling me my mic's on mute. I'm Alistair Fulton. I've been in and around this industry for a good long time. I started in IoT kind of in reverse. I started building IoT solutions when they were still called M2M and telematics, and then worked backwards through helping lead the early development of Azure IoT, Hitachi's Lumada Industrial IoT platform, and then focusing on LoRa, LP-WAN for a few years, leading Semtech's business there, and now Blues. And Blues is a company that's focused on solving what we think is a very, very common problem in IoT in general, and that's just the sheer complexity of connectivity. As you were saying, Fred, complexity is the devil which besieges most IoT projects, and ultimately can lead to a lot of failure. We're driven by a vision and a belief that when you look at the industrial and enterprise space, most physical products will become cloud connected, data centric, intelligent machines backed by some form of intelligent service at some point, and that transition and trend has only been accelerated by the advent of easy to use, effective, cost-effective AI solutions. But that transformation can't and won't be limited just to companies that have massive R&D budgets and access to the kind of security, communications, embedded engineering, hardware design, AI talent that's necessary, a lot of the time today. They'll simply be looking at business problems that they can solve through connecting devices. We think that there's a lot of options today when it comes to what you do with the data. I think often the issue is a challenge around understanding of business case or clarity of purpose. But there are many easy to use tools and platforms which enable companies and their partners to build really compelling solutions. What stops people a lot of the time is just the sheer complexity of just getting something connected. And when you look at what's available today, the hyperscalers are really focused on a kind of bottom-up chips, radios, modules, SIM management, connectivity, operating system, IoT platform, a whole bunch of different choices that customers need to make in their development process, which ultimately don't contribute a great deal of value. And so what we're trying to do as a business is really enable, the growth of those solutions by enabling remote wireless connection between your device and cloud. Simple as that. And that takes the form of really three components. The first is a physical hardware component that goes into the edge device. We call it a note card. You can think of it as a universal module with a plug and play model that we'll talk through today, with an M.2 connector that you can plug into any board. Options that cover most flavors of LTE, so Cat1 Biz, Cat1, Cat-M IoT, but also Wi-Fi only, LoRa, and most recently satellite options. And so you can connect any sensor to any microcontroller and connect that microcontroller to any note card that fits your purpose. Your choice of communication technology should not have a major impact on your development process. And that's really at the core of our design thesis, that you should be able to just swap in and swap out. So if you want to build a device with Wi-Fi connectivity, because that's the easiest, do so. And then when it comes to time to deploy that device in the field, you can make a choice without any opportunity cost to make it a cellular device, or to make it a satellite device, or make it a LoRa device, without having to make any changes to your code base and without having to make any changes to your hardware design. That's really the goal. All of this is hidden behind a simple JSON-based API. And the goal is to abstract away the radio so that as a developer, you shouldn't really have to spend time understanding how the nuances of the radio actually work. You most certainly shouldn't have to spend time learning custom AT commands to go with one choice of module or another choice of module. You should simply be able to write JSON scripts that instruct the device what to do and how to behave. Now, of course, end to end, you would expect all of that to be encrypted, which it is. So we encrypt and compress on the device. We send over off the internet, so private VPN tunnel through to a simple cloud platform called NoteHub. Very much a router server model, not a platform in the truest sense of the word. We don't build applications. We don't get into the solution side. We get data from A to B, A being a note card, B being the NoteHub. And from the NoteHub, we route to any cloud of your choice. We have automated routes to most of the large ones. It's extremely simple to build a route to your own private cloud or some other platform that you've chosen. And that model of building, integrating, and configuring should be something that takes days, not weeks, and most certainly not months. And we've seen customers go through that process in a day or two to get to a point of having a POC pilot device, and into production, in a couple of months. That's really what we regard as success. And really the drivers, behind all of that, is to unlock business value, to enable customers to get there quicker, either by just simply getting them into the marketplace. A lot of our customers today, most of our customers are in the industrial and enterprise space. They're either driven by demand from their customers to develop a connected service that adds value to their product, or they're driven by competitors doing the same, or any number of reasons. But I've never met a customer who said to me, I'd like to get into market much slower than I could. Time is really of the essence, and time drives a lot of cost saving as well. Just spending less time in the development process means you spend less money. And we are fervent believers in the fact that you should not have to spend months prototyping, a radio-based device before you even get to think about what the application is and what the value is. And then, of course, the reduced downtime that comes with these solutions is often at the core of customer value, and being able to understand what's happening in your environment and run diagnostics is the ultimate goal. So that's kind of what we do. It's end to end, super simple. We'll talk through how some of what we do complements the rest of the four-stage model today. But at our core, we focus on simplicity and the removal of complexity.
Excellent. So next up is John Hertrich from PSA. John, tell us a little bit about yourself and about PSA.
Well, Fred, Alistair, thank you very much. I would like to tell you a little bit about PSA, who we are, and why we fit with this network very well. Because when you look at what it takes to get a product to market, there's a lot of challenges in getting the right ingredients. This is computing power, this is your connectivity, what's the right platform, how do I hook it up and put it all together into a device that you can actually deliver to the market. And again, Alistair mentioned this, time to market is a critical component of this. And so this is going through, as an organization, how do you get an enterprise IoT product to market? And IoT is really the device side of it. And at PSA, we also cover the enterprise side of that business. And so much of that data that is being collected, as you saw within the blues, is going through Notecard. So that's a great way of getting that data up into the cloud and processing it as well. So PSA as an organization, we help you through that concept, through the design as well, getting the engineering prototype done quickly. I mean, you want to get your prototype in place, you want to get a product to market, and with that, and again, that's the IoT device, the concepting, the engineering of that. It also is the back-end pieces, the user applications as well, being able to build that and put that data in front of your customers and your employees that are using that as well. So when you look at something here, there is a lot of pieces to this. This is the IoT device that's at the endpoint. How do you build that device and do it in a quick way to get it to market so you can do it in scale and quantity? With that as well at PSA, so much of that is also incorporating a cloud component. We help organizations do the cloud side of that as well as a professional services organization, and even that end user engagement access point. So it could be onto a device, could be through a mobile application. So many of these smart connected devices are connected through a mobile handset as well. So when you look at that endpoint, we're very good at actually taking the right ingredients. One of those key ingredients in that process is the connectivity. We also look at the compute power as well. We have partners that are very similar in having a SOM module that you can place onto a custom carrier board. And so getting a product to market is easy and quickly using these types of components and solutions. And so the way we do that, there's a couple different steps in that process and journey. So one of those is looking at the discovery. What is it that that product needs to be? Looking at the business cases and needs and really clearly understanding what those needs are. So we actually work with our customers through discovery as a service and getting that truly understand of what that product looks like. Talk about, Alistair mentioned, getting it done in a matter of days. Feasibility is a service. And this is getting your benchtop solution actually deployed very quickly within days. With that, the next step of that journey is really scaling that through scalability as a service, getting through that design, getting through that product ready to get to a production environment, working with contract manufacturers to get it to scale. So we actually will go through discovery, feasibility, and actually do the complete design and delivery of that product all the way to the contract manufacturer so it can be done in quantities. So Fred, I'll turn it back to you.
Great. Well, guys, this was a good introduction, and I think again it's very thematic to when Keith said we want to just from an IMC point of view, we want to make things easier, less friction, quicker. Time is money. There's a lot of complexities that can be taken away by doing things like the note card, like the pluggable SOMs that are out there. A note card is not a solution. The note card is a very valuable, subset of the solution, but sensors are needed. Different use cases are created by users, and things have to be realized. So, we understand there's a few components here, and you've described a few of them. How does it work? If a customer comes in, how do they view the collaboration amongst, Blues, yourself, and any other partner that you bring into this space? And John, maybe, discovery as a service, maybe I'll start with you on how does it really work?
It really is. It starts with the discovery of the service, truly trying to understand what's the business need. So when you look at a device and you figure out, is that device in a mobile scenario or is it in a fixed asset scenario location? So you look at your data. Data connectivity is a key part of this. Where is that data connection? What's the stability of that data connection? Is it in a mobile location? Is it going around the globe or is it just moving around the state? That's a key part of it. So going through that discovery, really understanding what their business case needs are, especially as we look at connectivity, that's a key part of that. And working with a partner like Blues, we're able to bring forward a variety of solutions. It could be a Bluetooth, could be a Wi-Fi, a LoRaWAN, could be cellular. So what's their primary connection? Do they need a backup connection? There's a lot of questions that people aren't always thinking about. And so we help them understand what are the right questions and let them focus on thinking about what their customer needs are. And then we help translate that into the right technology selections. And connectivity is a key part of that problem that customers need to resolve.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts, Alistair?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I think connectivity, from our perspective, should just be invisible in the background. I mean, it's an essential part of enabling a connected device solution, surprisingly enough. But very often, because honestly, the industry itself has done such a terrible job of delivering easy-to-use tools to developers, just the connectivity part of building a solution often ends up being the biggest time suck. And that's the last thing it should be. It just should work. We've been led to believe for many years that cellular technologies in particular just work. And they do once you've got a connected device. But getting to the point where you've got a connected device is just extraordinarily painful. So, I always say to customers, we enable value as a company. We don't deliver value. Blues just makes pain and cost and time go away so that they can actually focus on the sorts of problems and questions that John just talked to. That's what customers should be thinking about. What am I trying to do as a business? What information do I need to do that? What information do I already have within my data set? What incremental data do I need? What signals do I need from which devices, which processes, and how do I wrap that all together into business value? Whether that business value is a better product for their customer, whether it is a product that consumes less and therefore generates more margin or allows them to be more flexible on cost, whether it's a product that complies with regulations, whether it's a product that doesn't contribute to climate change, whether it, those are the sorts of questions that the customers really care about. And yet, over the years, and I say as a whole, as an industry, all we've done is put landmines in their way that have made it difficult to get there. And I understand why. A lot of technology providers are focused perhaps more on locking customers in. On the software side, a lot of providers over the years have been focused on a land grab to please, the VCs that are backing them, to show growth, and most have spent little time thinking about what customers actually have to do. Because if they had, there would have been a hell of a lot more cooperation, between providers in this space. And there would have been much more of, what John talked about. We should be able to provide a building block to a solution that John and you, Fred, can take with a customer and say, right, the opportunity cost of making the wrong choice about wireless is gone. You don't have to worry now about whether or not is Cat 1bis the right solution for you or is Cat M the right solution for you. You shouldn't have to see each of those choices as they are today as kind of a $400,000, potential mistake. Because if I pick a module and I go down that path, I'm kind of screwed if I got the answer wrong. That shouldn't be, a barrier. It is often, and our hope is that other companies start, taking some of the same mindset that Blues has taken to say, well, let's actually focus on what customers are trying to do. Let's focus less on our business and more on what their business is. And if we do that successfully, then, we won't have to worry about our business.
Right. But I'll tell you, from an IoT launch point of view, we spend a lot of time and we talk about, experience and ecosystem. And, a lot of folks, jumping into the IoT space, they don't know what they don't know. And they make some assumptions and they might do something, on their own that gets them kind of in a lock-in position. And that's what I really like about kind of this ecosystem developing that makes it easier. you're supplying an M.2 connected device that, again, with a couple simple, JSON, messages in and out of that, it just works.
Mhm.
I think about the internet, right? When the internet came out, it was so hard and difficult, and now everybody uses it. Whether you're an influencer, whether you're a product salesperson, an online marketeer, the Internet of Things. The internet part shouldn't be the hard part, right? It should become, what is the thing? What do you need it to do? How you connect it should be more and more simplified. And I think this is a start to that.
Well, if we had left it that everybody had to build their own Wi-Fi router in order to get onto the internet, where do you think the internet would be? And that's essentially what IoT is. We say to folks, great, you've seen the blurb, you understand the value, you understand now the value that AI can add to the data you generate. Now go figure out how to build yourself a Wi-Fi router and come back when you're done, and then you can get some of this value. And it's frankly ridiculous. The internet would never have taken off if we'd required consumers to go build their own hardware. And yet, why do we expect enterprises and customers across the spectrum to do exactly that? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah,
Right.
and this is exactly when you look at the connectivity. It's a key ingredient in delivering an entire solution. And this is one of those ingredients that makes it very simple to actually create a final product. You don't have to go through licensing. You don't have to go, okay, let's go get a frequency test on this thing. This is all done. And within a very short period of time, you're able to not only just plug it in, but you're able to quickly make a change to your communications mode that you want. So you can actually have multiple SKUs with a common carrier board.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can actually have multiple SKUs without having to have a different variety of carrier board at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the goal, just to interject, the goal is really on the technical side, exactly what you just described, but on the commercial side as well. Each cellular note card comes with 10 years of connectivity. You don't have to go select a SIM provider. You don't have to manage multiple SIMs. You don't have to have contracts with carriers. You don't have to have, because we thought that, yes, technically there's a real technical barrier here, but also commercially, I've had customers say to me, well, I had to go and employ 4 people to manage the SIMs across the devices I've got, deployed across multiple countries. It's like, why would you have to do that? It's crazy. And yet today you do most of the time.
Right. So John, Alistair said something, he said that 2-letter acronym that's everywhere, AI, and there's a lot of work around pushing compute closer and closer to the edge. So the edge and IoT, it used to be just a sensor and go to a smart cloud. Now it's pushed more down to the edge. The connectivity SOM, the note card is fantastic, but there's also a lot of options for compute. And, now we are getting to yet another, technical domain beyond the connectivity. Where do you help with the compute side of this?
Very good question, because when you actually look at it, there's other partners that we also work with when it comes to computing, and it's picking the right computational performance of the device itself. And so depending on, do you want AI at the edge? And if you do your AI at the edge, what's nice about that is you can limit your compute bandwidth that you have to push back. So with that, if you think of a camera collects a ton of information. However, it's looking for a decision. And so with that, you can process at the edge with AI and then push a single piece of data back into the cloud versus having a very broad bandwidth. So when we look at working with customers, we're looking at, what are you trying to accomplish? What's the sensory data that you're collecting? And with that sensory data, should it all be pushed into a cloud with broadband connectivity, or can you process that at the edge? So when we look at performance, it's a balance between performance on lightweight, maybe battery powered, to more of an AI edge device, but limiting your bandwidth communication. So you're getting more responsiveness at the edge, and you're limiting your bandwidth push as well.
That's spot on. And there's partners that you have that, deliver SOM kind of technologies as well to do that. So it's kind of a mix and match model, picking best in class, for the edge device. Just like Alistair said, if people had to buy, create their own, internet routers and endpoints back in the good old days, that we wouldn't have been here where we're at today. But in this space, if you're trying to build a device and prototype it and show it, what kind of choices do you personally have by vendor and by like kind of category?
Yeah, so when you look at vendors in the SOM space, there's one that we work with and do recommend, and this is Torodax. And Torodax is great when it comes to picking the SOMs that you want. Is this a battery-powered device that's going out to the field and I have a choice there, or is this a high-performance AI edge device? And so we really have some excellent choices when making on the SOM side of it. And what's nice about that is not only is it just, I don't have to go pick a processor, go pick a piece of memory, and then I have to figure out what's the software stack going on to it. You're picking a SOM with a fully loaded software stack ready to go. And so what's nice, the key thing is time to market. I, as a developer, can pick a SOM, pick a channel, load the software, and focus really on the firmware business piece that needs to be there, not the entire stack of hardware, putting it on. So we're just taking custom carrier board, connecting to those key sensors, pulling that data in, and focusing on the business module that is the focus of what your customers' needs are, not trying to build a computer, because that's all available. The computer computation is there. What power performance do you need? The connectivity of the data connectivity is there. What is your channel mode that you're trying to use? Focusing on your value point. That's your business intelligence of the firmware that's running at the edge. Focus on that piece of it.
Yeah. So, Alistair, I mean, you guys have a lot of customers in Blues that are buying note cards. I mean, clearly working with guys like John and PSA, there's either gaps, whether it's, it's just not your core business, or you've got too many customers with questions. What are some of the big questions customers have when they come in and try to create a connected product or an enhancement to a product that they already have?
I mean, well, honestly, this is why, as a company, we're focused on partnership as the route to market, because we're very I'll say we're very strict on what's our focus, and our focus is on getting data from A to B. And now the function of A, if A is the endpoint, has changed over the years. As John was saying, edge compute is incredibly important. It used to be driven by the demand for real-time processing at the edge. So if you had mission critical applications, being able to take it, if your worker's hand is caught in the press, being able to turn the machine off, those sorts of instances. But the cost of building edge intelligence used to be really prohibitively high. And so when you looked at the marginal cost of connecting the device versus the marginal benefit, you often found that you were restricted to a very small number of use cases. Now, AI is opening up that. The advent of companies like Torodax building extraordinarily efficient compute at the edge is opening that up. And so there's more demand. But most of the time, Fred, our customers come to us and they say, there's two categories. One category is, we've spent the last 3 years trying to build a connected solution. We either have to do it from a regulatory perspective, our main competitor has done it, or we see an opportunity to disrupt the market, by introducing something that's different and delivers more customer value. We failed. We spent a vast amount of money. We're on the fifth spin of the board. Help. And often those customers' reaction when we sit down with them for 20 minutes is somewhat anger, I have to say. And their anger is really, why didn't I find out about this before? Why did you let me spend 3 years banging my head against a concrete wall? Why did you not tell me about Blues sooner? Which we're always apologetic about, but we're doing what we can. The other category, but those customers know what they're trying to do in most instances. During the time they burned on the hardware has also been used in parallel to figure out what the business case is. Often, when they come to the point of thinking, why am I carrying on? This is so painful. Why am I doing this? They get more crystal clear about what the business case, and that's why they've continued to press forward. There are other customers who come to us who say, I am trying to solve this business problem. I know that connectivity is going to be the hardest part, and that's why I've come to talk to a company like Blues. but I'm trying to figure out how to deliver a solution. I either have some or none of hardware expertise or software development expertise, and some customers have some and some don't. And our answer in those situations is, let me introduce you to some of our partners. And that's where partners like PSA are so critical to our business, because we can make the pain of connectivity go away. We believe that when those customers come to us and say, I know that connectivity is the biggest problem I've got to solve, so that's why I've started there, that shouldn't be the case. But we know as soon as that problem has gone away, they can actually get on with the real value, which is figuring out, as John was saying, and you were saying, Fred, what can I do with this? How at macro level can I actually make my business better? And the kind of divide in a lot of those companies, honestly, is, there's the team that's focused on trying to solve the hardware problem, and then there's the team that's focused on trying to solve the business problem. And in the main, to generalize, the COO, CFO, CEO level conversation that's around what are we actually trying to do as a business, that's not an audience that cares about the technical problems or knows about the technical or wants to think about the technical problems. And so you have in a lot of enterprises who are trying to go down this path, this kind of schizophrenic, there's one conversation that's focused down on the nitty gritty of the hardware, which is where all the money is spent and all the time is wasted. And then there's a conversation with the business, the business decision makers who are frustrated beyond all belief that why are we not there yet? And there's internal strife within these companies. And it's partners like PSA and IoT Launch. You guys can solve that problem. You can help customers and hold them by the hand as they go through that process, just in the same way that they shouldn't have to reinvent hardware. They shouldn't have to reinvent the whole thesis about what IoT is. They should be able to draw on partners' expertise, who you guys have done it 100 times before. You've faced maybe not all of the problems, but a lot of them. And so you can save those customers having to go through that same learning curve. So there are those two types, Fred. And even honestly, in the first instance, very often we find that introducing some of our partners is also a critical enabler, because it might be that the customer is struggling with hardware design. It might be because they're struggling with, how do I tune the business case so my CFO actually gets what I'm trying to say? Or how do I integrate it into my operations so that I can actually deliver the value? But partnership and collaboration is to me, it's the very definition of what IoT is about. It's different things working with one another to produce value.
Well said. And I do, the different camps inside of a customer, whether it's business, finance, sales, who they just want it done, they want it to work, and they're trying to figure out the use case and how to monetize it. And there's a commercial discussion that is frequently delayed because the tech guys keep telling them, we're not ready, we're not ready, we're not ready, we're not ready. And then there's the tech discussion, which I think, we can solve a lot of those challenges through kind of this collaboration, which is great. But you're spot on. And I think also there's times that I've experienced where the tech team just needs a mouthpiece from their little ecosystem inside their company to their management. Someone needs to translate the reality of where they can go and how quickly it can or can't be done, depending on what they're trying to accomplish. And frequently we become kind of almost that translator between these two worlds. IoT is from ops to IT. I mean, that's the game. And we all know that frequently they don't speak the same language.
I'd say that often I see the friction that is, I call it engineering pride. We're all to one degree or another, engineers by mindset. And, often in some of our larger enterprises, we approach this topic quite carefully, because often you'll find a core engineering team that says, well, I can build that, which is a true engineering mindset. Of course I can build that. I don't need to go and buy this. And the answer on the connectivity side is yes, of course you can. There's many, many, many tools out there that you can figure out how to integrate and take all. Of course you can. You're a brilliant engineer. But why would you? Why would you? When you can spend that time and money on actually the bit that delivers value, which is everything else.
Right. Yeah, and I think you've touched on it. And you mentioned as you encounter customers, and often we come into a customer and says, hey, we're 3 years into this and I'm still struggling. And we go, okay, let's help you solve this problem. And so, and that's that time window that says, hey, this should not be an expensive engineering exercise. This should be get your product to market and what are the right ingredients. And when we look at this and shortening that lifespan or cycle of getting a product to market from years to months is critical, and you're picking components that are proven, tested, and working, and you're plugging them into really focusing in on just the core business piece that needs to be developed. We don't need to develop an entire comm stack. It's been done. It's ready to use. These are Lego building blocks. So we take the building blocks we know that are fully tested and working and just really put the glue in place for those and focus on your business problem, focusing on that use case. That's the firmware. That's the value you bring to your customers. It's not a comm stack. It's not a processor. It is a business need. And that's what's nice about getting that product to market quickly.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's interesting. I reflect back when we were all together in Vegas in January at CES in the IMC Pavilion area. CES is such a monstrous event, right? If somebody actually finds their way into the IoT ecosystem space, they're pretty much qualified already. There's a lot cooler things to go see in Vegas than where we're at. But we'd have these qualified individuals coming in, qualified meaning they knew they needed something. And a lot of the conversations were around folks that had an existing asset. They had an existing product line. And John, I think about the heat pump, heat storage guy. He's got thousands of units out there, and he's got a retrofit model. He's got a new products introduction model. They probably still use a fax machine to take orders, right? So they are not ready to jump into this space without the help of ecosystem partners. And the conversation was really all about how do you want to do it? How do you, what are your needs? They wanted to reach out and get data from, the electric company to manage, like variable pricing. Well, that's not an IoT problem. So, in your subject matter in domain expertise, Mr. Customer, go focus on where you bring that value in and let us, kind of as the ecosystem, deliver the plumbing and the compute and some of the basic performance that's needed, to get your solutions to reality. I chuckle, people look at houses, the engineer, the carpenter, I don't want to stereotype anybody, but, somebody's looking at how is this house built, and then the wife or the somebody else goes like, wow, what are the fixtures like? There's the fit and finish, which the customer brings that subject matter domain expertise in, and then there's the kind of the bones of the solution. And I think what this team's doing is they're really putting the bones of the solution together so that folks can go quickly towards the fit, finish, and time to market types of stuff. I'm trying to look to see if you've got questions from the audience. There's a couple of comments that were made, which we appreciate. One said, hey, this is by far one of the best webinars I've seen in IoT as an IoT business owner. So I don't think there's a question embedded in there, but I'm glad someone out there's listening and enjoying. Let's talk about optimization. So I'm an engineer, so I'll challenge you, Alistair. If I'm going to do millions of devices, no, everybody says that. I jokingly say if I had $1 for everybody who said they were going to do 1 million IoT devices in the project, I wouldn't be on this webinar. I'd be sitting on an island somewhere. But if you're actually scaling from tens to hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands to millions, when does it make sense to optimize kind of a SOM environment into a chip on board environment? Because people want to know there's a history. And John, you talked about scale as a service. There's hyperscale also, where this model starts to maybe not be so applicable. but man, by then you've already succeeded, right? So there's a destiny there. But talk to me about kind of the economics, Alistair.
Yeah, so when you look at this and in your stages of this process, is your stage starts as far as you have to get your first product to market, and you want to get that quickly, and then you start to scale your numbers. And what's nice about this is even with Blues, they have a scalability option that says, okay, once you get above a certain threshold, let's say 5,000 or 10,000, they have an option to depopulate some of those standard cards into a custom card. So I'm going to turn this over to Alistair at this point. What are some of the scaling that you do when it comes to actually getting a better price point?
Yeah, I mean, and well, first of all, I would say actually, talking of those customers who wander into the area in CES as an example, if you look at who is out there is making machines that would benefit from some intelligence. The reality is, it's in most cases, in most markets, certainly in the US, 95+% of our activity is in small and medium-sized companies. It's the company down the road that's producing a particular type of industrial compressor and selling it to their customers. So when you come to questions of scale, the inverse of scale is accessibility. For those companies, they may be only ever success for them may be 10,000 devices, maybe 100,000, 200,000, and in those cases, our goal really with our core product is you should always be able to look at the alternative. What would it cost for me to start with, a cellular module and take the traditional path and hire an embedded team and go down that path, and what would it cost just to start with essentially with a pre-made building block in the form of Blues? And I've done this math a few times with customers. It depends on the industry, but you have to get up to a pretty high volume of hundreds of thousands plus before it starts getting more economically viable to go your own route. In most instances, if you factor in the cost of ownership, the cost of maintenance support, it's millions, not hundreds of thousands. So there's that component. That said, as John said, we also have customers who are larger enterprises. One of our customers is the largest manufacturer of vehicle batteries, for example. They talk in tens and hundreds of millions of units. And so what we've done to help those customers optimize costs still further is introduce something called Note Card XP, which, as John said, really is, when you look at the board, is it better, is it cheaper to take the PMIC off the power management IC off the board and to build your own power management? Is it more sense? Do you really need the accelerometer that's on the board? Maybe not. Do you need temperature? Maybe not. And so it's a way that customers can take the cost of a note card and really half it. Our goal is really to cater to those customers. Now, there are some customers for whom an approach that uses a set form factor doesn't work. So if you're trying to build wearables, for example, you're kind of constrained to a chip down approach. So you don't have the option of something like Blues. But for most customers, either the math of actually taking a chip down approach will never work for the volume they're at. And for those that it does, our goal is really to optimize the cost, enable them to make choices around how they want to enable the device, and really help them along that journey. Most of our customers go from prototype with Blues all the way through to scale production. And every now and then they ask the question, and the engineering pride question of, well, we could build this ourselves comes up, every 12 months or so. And we have that conversation, and we generally conclude, well, actually, yes, we could build it, but it doesn't make any economic sense to, so we'll carry on. But for most of the time, I think is a challenge for the industry as a whole, and I think why the kind of approach that we're talking about is so important. It's actually the company that's really, really good at making a particular type of industrial compressor and delivering that to their customers and understanding their market that can actually benefit the most from IoT. And those customers are mostly excluded from being able to build IoT solutions purely because of cost and complexity. And that should not be the case.
Well said. Okay. Now, John, from a board level, from a workbench board level to a product that can be pushed into a POC or a pilot with a customer. There's other requirements. There's some mechanical stuff. There's packaging. There's certifications, whether it's, explosive proof or, there's, customers can have all kinds of different requirements. Is that a stage kind of following basic implementation? Tell me where, like the first step of productization comes in.
Yeah. And so when you look at these stages, and there are some clear stages, the first one is discovery, understanding what is the product that you need. And then you start to look at what are the pieces that you actually have to put it together. And these are the ingredient selection choices. But then that packaging piece also is a key part of this. So it comes into packaging. So is it an IP67 or is it a 68 when it comes to water or when it comes to organizations? It may be a UL as well. So that whole journey process of getting into a final product version, as a service organization, we help them through that journey. What we will then finally get them to is a point of contract manufacturing, whereas we don't do contract manufacturing. However, we will introduce or work with their contract manufacturing to make sure that that entire stage of from benchtop to a commercial product that's commercialized, we're actually there to help them through that entire cycle. And that's what's nice. You eliminate a lot. Focus on your customer needs, not your engineering resource needs.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, listen, guys, I think we're not too far from the end here. Is there any questions? I'll reach out one more time to the audience if they want to put something in the chat or the question space. That'd be great. In the meantime, I think, this webinar hits spot on, kind of at the high level, what IMC is all about. How do we bring buyers and sellers together? How do we bring ecosystems together to simplify the path to success for IoT? And it's not getting, simpler. There's a lot more choices. Back in the good old days when it was 2G, you had one way. Now you've got all kinds of low power, high power, satellite, terrestrial. There's all kinds of choices. And I think, as you said, Alistair, in your opening, the note card is there for almost all of the pertinent choices, which is great. And John, you talked about, there's a variety of compute, choices that are out there and options. So that makes it easy. The fact that you can spin a baseboard, put unique sensors, you can move to packaging, you can get to, production and manufacturing release as required, I think is great. All in all, customers, the takeaway was how do you get the business case to flow? How do you fund, the ramp? How do you make sure you survive to see the revenue flow instead of getting stuck in the fifth spin of the board, as you said, Alistair? Mm-hmm. So I do think this is helpful for people to look at. There is another way. I don't need to be a DIYer from start to finish. Leverage the ecosystem that you guys have put together, that IMC fosters, and that the industry, I think, so desperately needs. So with regard to last, kind of closing remarks, I'll start with you, Alistair. Is there things that, we've talked about today or things that you see going forward that you'd like to leave the audience with?
I'll say this. I think that, I've been in this space, like I said at the outset, for more years than I care to remember, but rapidly approaching 30 years. When I look at what we've done as an industry, I think it is on us that these technologies have not been adopted. And the reason I say that is that all too often, I think technology companies, technology providers like ourselves, they focused on the exciting thing. And what engineers do is they invent new things. That's what they do. And we focused on that to the exclusion of thinking about what customers are actually trying to do. And I think that no more is that true in the case of edge connectivity, both the hardware and the wireless network components thereof. I mean, I was in I think it was Hannover Messe earlier last year, and I walked past this huge great stand talking about 6G, and I thought, shoot me now, because I'm still talking to customers who are pissed off about 2G being sunsetted. So as an industry, what we've done is we've thrown new technology after new technology, new buzzword after new buzzword at customers. I mean, it's akin to customers walking into a class of kindergartners, all of whom are trying to yell about their thing and why their thing's best and most important. And, and honestly, confusion is the first reaction. Honestly, I also encounter a lot of customers who are angry. They're angry at the industry for having done such a poor job in helping them actually do what they're trying to do. I mean, when you look at a lot of IoT technologies, I tend to think, this is what happens when you throw a bag of money into a dark room full of engineers and lock the door and wait and see what happens next. No customer was involved in the development process. No one ever asked the customer about usability. Good God. I mean, when you look at how difficult some of these technologies are to actually use, no customer could have been asked. So I think, going forward, the thing that's really encouraged me over the course of the last few years, honestly, is the realization amongst the industry that cooperation is the key to customer success. When no one knew what IoT was, everyone claimed that they could solve every problem, and everybody was trying to build a solution that meant everybody had to use their solution alone. I think 5 or 6 years ago, I'm not quite sure what changed, but there was a sudden pivot really to companies realizing that no one's actually going to be able to use all these great technologies if they don't work together. No enterprise customer is going to bet on a single company to provide all of their solutions. Either a single company that's Microsoft. Microsoft did a great job of teaching customers why single vendor solutions were sometimes not in their interest, or a startup that's figured out how to do something interesting. And the longer that we've asked customers to make unitary choices, the longer they've held off. So cooperation is the key. I see partnerships between companies like Blues and PSA and Toradex and IoT. This is critical. We're listening to our customers, and I hope that that's a theme that continues. I believe it will, because I think that it's showing real traction and success, and customers are generating value. But I would entreaty everybody, if you like, look for opportunities to cooperate, not reinvent. If something already exists, don't build another version. Figure out how to incorporate someone else's product or integrate with someone else's product, or make it possible for your customers to use both. Don't try and lock customers in. Don't try and build walled gardens. Don't try and be proprietary. Think about what customers are trying to achieve and focus on what you can do as a business to help them get there.
Perfectly said. John, as you wrap up your closing thoughts, talk about, kind of also how customers engage and where we find your customers and how do they contact you? What's a CTA? If somebody is interested in something like this, how should they proceed?
Yeah, so when we look at customers reaching out and connecting to us, obviously PSA is they can reach and connect to us on our website through channels. There's information that's available as handouts and downloads to find out how to connect with PSA. But I wanted to really quickly, I know we have limited time here to wrap up, is Alistair hit it very quickly with regards to when you're don't become an engineering firm, focus on your customers. What are your business problems? What are your business needs? Focus on that value proposition, not trying to become, hey, I'm going to learn how to design the next comm stack. And that is already done. Same thing when we look for the computer process of it. Focus on that thin piece of value that you can bring and deliver to market. And this is what we actually are able to deliver and bring as a solution for the customers, from an IoT device to a cloud to a mobile app. This is what we know, and actually then focus on what your customer is telling you. And then we actually translate that into the engineering solution.
Cool. Well, guys, this was good. I can just agree with both of you. I've been in the business a long time, Alistair, like you. I've been too many years to count, but my kids and others ask wow, man, you're getting old. I'm like, well, there's two things about getting old that you can guarantee are good. A lot of things are bad, but two are good. One, you have wisdom. You've fallen in the snake pit before. You've seen it done wrong before. And if you've taken mental note, you might avoid that for your customers going forward. And two, if you've managed things well, you've got a very strong network of partners and people that you know. So wisdom and network are two kind of guarantees. And I think what we've hopefully shown today to the audience is, leverage the wisdom that's across your partners, leverage the ecosystem that knows how to collaborate on your behalf, and and engage and go work with your customers to make sure you're satisfying them. So with that, I want to say thank you to you both for sharing with us, and I want to also thank IMC for hosting this seminar, the webinar. And I want to make sure that everyone is on the audience knows that tomorrow they can join another IMC webinar, which is the track 2 of the Industrial IoT session at 11 o'clock Eastern. And that's 5G and the Edge, a marriage meant for the industrial applications. And I think you'll take something away from that. So with that, I want to thank you on behalf of IMC. I want to thank you guys. And I want to thank most of all the audience and the participants who took an hour of their time and gave us some great feedback and some good questions. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.